Cool. So tonight we're going to add to our lidded container project. So as I said, we're going to be adding the just some features to it, like a little thumb catch like that. Ideally, some sort of simplified clasp, as well as after the fact, we'll be adding some more advanced options for actual functioning closing latches and additional hardware and that sort. But just for the basics here, let's hop back over to Fusion and work on our containers and such. So we last left off, we had finished off making the lid. It has whatever your imported model is, in this case, a heart as a mesh. That's why it's super duper detailed. Um, but we imported some hardware, snapped them in place with the joint tool, and we also set the joint limits for the container to open and close and such. So what I wanted to do tonight was go over some different options you could make on this. Now, one of the other examples, and let me hop over, this is the one that I had added multiple latches and such to, which this is what we'll be modeling additional components to, so it actually opens that way, latches open and close, all the fun bits. But let's simplify here, hide all of the previous versions, and switch over to my mistletoe and its latches and such. Oh, crud, I added those to that one, not to that one. All right. Oh, they're copies. And they're linked. Oh, well, that's okay. Ultimately, I made copies of these existing objects, and they are linked. So when I added the tabs and such for the additional latches, it added that too. But that's okay. Don't matter none. All right. So with this model, one of the things I did was adding like this little simple thumb catch. That's just literally a spot to where your hand or your thumb or so could actually like grab onto the object. So there's any number of options for that. That is simply one of the features that is required for the assignment, in that some sort of additional feature, as well as some sort, or the other option is a variety of holes and such. You could use a singular drawing. You could use a variety of patterns, either with the pattern tool, either with the circle pattern on a track, or the rectangular pattern tool. And that you could either use extrude to cut straight through, partially through, or the emboss deboss tool to have it raised, lowered, or it could be text. Any combination also. It's up to you. But I wanted to start with just some simple options here. So let me hop back over to the model we were working on, and something like a little tab or so. Now, one of the tricks to this is going to be that depending on what tool you used to hollow out the object, it will react to, or it will influence how you make additions to. So like if you used a shell tool that hollows out the inside of this part, you would definitely need to make this feature prior to the shell. Otherwise, it's going to cut directly through this thin wall. If it's an extrude, if you originally made it with an extrude, you're going to need to go back and re-edit that original sketch. But let's work with what we got. I think we did the lid with a shell tool. So what I'm going to do is just model something simple like this. This little thumb catch, which is just an extruded circle, but it also projects upward with this notch here. And how I did this was depending on where you place this in your timeline. As we've said before, you can mix and match and move your timeline back and forth. You can swap the placement of certain tools, and that is absolutely what is necessary for something like this. This thing is always in the way, the zoom tool. So what I'm going to do for that is I'm going to, first off, let's activate just the lid. And, well, looks like we did use the shell tool, great, but because we made the original sketch outside of any of these, I have to go back and activate the entire project to do this. So let's jump back to the original sketch, not the heart. I don't want you, heart. You go away. So that was just the basic outline we used. So I'm going to go back into that, or I can add to it, meaning a second sketch. Let's keep it simple. I'm going to add to this sketch. So go to the sketch, mouse over, right click, edit sketch. There we go. So I'm just going to go to what will be the front. Use the circle tool, snap right along, and my constraint tools come up. The plus sign, the crosshair switches to an X, denoting it is intersecting two lines, and the triangle comes up showing it is a midpoint. There we go. I'm just going to draw a circle. I don't know, 10 millimeters. That seems reasonable-ish. Let's make it obscene. Let's make it 20. It's just crazy. No, obviously, which whatever. Okay, there we go. Just slightly larger. Great. Finish sketch. Now, outright, this should not alter anything because I haven't selected that for anything. But we do know that we're going to create extrusions and such to make these parts. So let's edit that extrude. That was the bottom one. Don't want that. We made the base before we made the lid. So make sure you got the right one. There we go. So what we're going to do with this is I'm also going to select here, but that throws stuff out of wonk. So what I'm finding is I'm going to need to actually create a second extrusion because this is only going to extrude the same height and everything. I can only do it one height, but that's fine. That means it needs to go there, but it needs to happen before we make the shell adjustment. There we go. Why is that hidden? Where are you? Why is it hiding from me? That is odd. Okay, that's funky. Sorry, bear with me a moment. I don't know why it's hiding. I was having an issue with visibility stuff earlier today. It's physically there, but for some reason it's not showing up. Well, that's mildly irritating. I don't know. Awesome. Always good to just be completely flummoxed. All right, so that was for the there. It's also coming back to a previous project. Yeah, don't know. I have no idea why it's not doing that. Maybe it's because when I cut and paste. All right, well, before I move it, positions. All right, great, there we go. It's still before the shell operation, so when I hide the base, there we go, still solid. All right, great. So from here, I'm going to extrude just that circle, but I'm going to want to make sure I get both the inside and outside, so the whole thing. Now, not negative, I want to go positive up, like, I don't know, 3 millimeters. Just making that little circle, not cut, I want to join that body. Great, there we go. Just making that little function there. Okay, so the reason I'm doing that is if I don't have that shell tool function beforehand, or if I don't have that shell tool there, when I hollow it out, then now it's small enough and it's going to add, or it would otherwise not show that feature. But I also want to make that little recess. So I'm going to need to add in an additional thing there. So let's add another extrude. And from here, of course, it hides that sketch. I want both of those. But if I extrude upwards, now it's going to cut all the way up to the top. So let's go ahead and set extent type to object, the lid, but it's going to cut everything, including the little tab I just made. So I can start the thing offset or from an object. So I don't actually have to start directly from the original plane. So problem is it's cut right through. Excuse me. So maybe I should have made this part first. We'll find out. But because I've already made the extrude, because I've already drug this piece all the way up, it's not letting me show this piece. But that's okay. What I could do, and the reason for that is if it's already cutting through an object, it's not going to stay visible. So before you actually slide that part up, let's select start and at that position. There we go. But it's not. Okay, great. Now it's doing funky stuff. I just canceled that just so it didn't cut through. Unfortunately, sometimes I have found that if you start to make some of the features or start to input information into your toolbox, be it extrude, whatever have you, sometimes if you start adding information in before you complete basically where it starts from, it kind of gets a little cross-wired. So just starting over, doing what I was talking about. So starting rather than at the profile plane, at the object. So I'm going to select starting there. And of course, it hid my profile, so I got to find that again. I want both of those, and it's starting at that object. Great. So now when I extrude upward, it is not interfering with that tab. And my extent type to object, rather than trying to remember what I measured it to, just snap to the top. Bam. There we go. So that's all. I'm just making a little cut feature in there. I hit OK. And so now I just have this little thumb catch, and it's got this snazzy little recess. So now when I go forward, and let me orbit up and I'll show you what's going to happen. I'm going to move past the shell tool operation, which hollowed this whole thing out. Before it was completely rectangular because the object was rectangular. Now, all right, so this can happen. Now, we'll fix that in a moment. But it just made the shell around that little bump out. So that's all. You're just making a little feature there, but it helps, or it's a way to work around anything you add to it. And again, because we made this whole thing a tapered extrusion going upward, it already takes that into consideration. Now, one of the things that can happen is this right here. Excuse me, this right here. This is because this was connected to here, but the shell tool reads objects in kind of weird ways sometimes. So let me go back and double check this extrude. Did we join these together? We did. Okay. So one way you could fix this is instead of joining this right now, let's go back and just make that a new body. Okay. It's going to recalculate everything. So it still made my cut, but this little piece here, and let me open bodies. So we still have the lid, but now we've got this little floating tab. The shell did not affect that little tab, but it did affect the extrude cut we made to make this little recess. So now, after we've made that shell tool, or we've done the shell tool operation, now we can combine them, join them together, find the lid and the little tab, join them together, bonk, no problem now. So now they're joined to one object, still the lid, and it just has this fancy little tab. So you make that whatever thickness you want, all that such. But because I made this rather than dimensionally, I added this little tab in this recess by extent types, meaning I'm just basing it off of different heights, and like this cut here started at wherever the top of this tab is. If I realized, oh, that tab's a little too small, I can go back in, edit that feature. Let's make that 5 instead, 5 millimeters thick. It's going to recalculate everything, still be the exact same, but starting there now. That's all. All right, so cool. That's the little tab. Seems like a lot of work around just to make that, but that's also because I was running into the issue of visibility. Don't know why it was doing that, but there we go. Still works. Same deal, same diff, no change to our hinge or anything like that. Great. Let's hide the box outline, reset. So next up is just making some features and such on this. Now, whatever you want to do is up to you. Again, we could add text, we could do all that. But one of the main things I want to show you with this is because we made this piece taper, you can draw directly on these surfaces too. So let's show a version here. On top, make a sketch. I'm going to just draw here on the top of this container. I'll rotate so I have a little bit more direct idea here. And let's make a text box. Just going to start somewhere. Cool. Mistletoe. Because it are. Oops. And we will align to center. Great. Need to make it any of that. Font, whatever you like. Again, be careful with your font choice because some fonts do weird things. I don't know. Doesn't really matter. I was just looking for something that might be funky. Classy. Great. Let's make it a little bit larger. Too big. Back it up. Slightly more reasonable. Okay, great. Yield mistletoe. And from here, you can use either the sketch or sketch and extrude, or let's play with the emboss tool just because it's better now. Now, like I said, the emboss tool will work very easily on any geometric surface. So I can select the text. Faces, obviously it's on that face already, so it's not a problem. And remember, emboss goes up, deboss cuts downward. The reason I'm using emboss instead of extrude is because if this was our curved surface, it would work perfectly, but extrude would not. So just for grins, let's go the other way, deboss. That way it doesn't cause issues if I wanted to print this upside down. Okay, great, sure, whatever. So that text did not have any issues with cutting inward. Great. But what if I wanted to do something more direct on like any of these tapered elements? The cool thing is you can make sketches directly on the face and you just select that. And if I turn to the right, which in this case is now back, that's confusing, you can see how my sketch plane is actually skewed to match that angle. So that's one of the really neat things about Fusion is that while it gets a little confusing when you're trying to select faces and things like that, you can draw directly on the face without having to align your plane to match. So something like this, it's going to build it all the way across. Great. Snap to view. Great. And I don't know. I was just playing with this. So let's make. Oh, I know. Let's make a projection and copy some of this part. So I'm going to use P project, and I'm just going to select these faces just because I can. There we go. So those little lines turn purple. Great. The reason I'm doing that is because I just want to play with those lines and make offsets of this. So I don't know, -5. And I'll show you why I'm doing this in a moment. Right click, repeat offset, -5. There we go. So something like that can easily become an extrude or so, or again, in this case, I'm going to use emboss. That way I don't have to duplicate the angles or anything. Let me finish sketch. And if I use emboss, selecting both of those faces, and again, let's do deboss. And the face I'm debossing from is that one. And we're going -2. Sure, why not? It's going to cut in a little bit. And hit OK. So it creates these recesses. It's just a way to add features. Now, I didn't have both of those selected, so let me double check, or let me go back, edit that feature. Faces, I also want it to affect that one. Sometimes it won't let you select more than one. Now, if these drawings were on the back side, it'd be no problem. But unfortunately, one of the drawbacks of using emboss deboss tools is it is limited in how many things you can select at once. So even though I selected both these sketch profiles and this face is the same face, it's not letting me select both of them. So I'm going to have to repeat that operation. So again, create, emboss. I have to unhide that sketch. So sketch profile, that one, faces, that one. Now it's doing the exact same thing, just on that side. Oops, that's emboss. So that's higher up. That's all. So those are just a couple of different ways you can add additional features. So you could draw into things, that sort. So if you wanted to, then of course, like let's make this slightly more reasonably printable. Put like some chamfers on this, because if you're trying to print and these solid overhangs, it gets a little funky. So I'm selecting chamfer, just selecting there. This is already a 2mm deboss, so it's cut in 2mm. Let's try 1. Doesn't quite get there because obviously it won't. 2, slightly too much for some reason. So let's try 1.5. I don't know why I'm having to creep up on this rather than it being an exact. Probably because emboss and such isn't an exact cut in. But there you go. The reason I'm adding this chamfer, this kind of window frame thing, is that if we were to print this, rather than it having to span an entire flat plane, it has this little bit of a chamfered corner there. Do the same thing over here. just to show you the versions there. I have to go around and select all of the faces, or sorry, all of the edges here. And let's see if it lets us do a 2mm. That one it does. So maybe Emboss is working better for what we're trying to do. And let me hide that sketch so we're not getting confused. So there you go. Just a way to add additional features onto your container. Now, it probably would have been, because I'm making these sections like this, it probably would have been better to have added like any sort of fillet or anything to the top corner here before I did that. So let me just select that upper edge. I want to make sure I'm also getting the little cut in, and let's say a 2mm fillet. Great, it does not interfere. So great, it didn't interfere with it that time. But again, one of the other things here, let me hide the base. Because I'm adding that fillet after the fact, it doesn't show up on the inside. Now, those windows here, those features, it not translating inside, that's a good thing. It makes it easier to print. But it might have been easier to have that fillet show up on the inside as well. So you have a couple of options for that too. You can either place that fillet prior to the shell feature, or just go in and add a fillet to this. Selecting the whole bottom, there you go. Easy peasy. Again, the reason you want to add fillets to some of this stuff is a sharp corner can't be a weaker print. A slight curve to that inside edge can improve both the strength of the print, and sometimes it can kind of speed things along just a skosh. Not a lot, but enough. All right, so that's the lid. That's a little thumb tab. That's some snazzy features. Main thing with this is we want to add little features, that sort of thing. Again, you are required to add these sort of things, whatever you want. Text, features, holes through it. It's up to you. The one other thing would be switching back to color mode and applying some appearances to it. So you just press A after hitting Shift in, Shift November to go back from auto color mode to component mode to just your appearance mode. And here, yeah, pick a bunch of stuff. I did notice that there's some more, some new appearances have shown up, and specifically in metal, there's now anodized aluminum colors. So heck yeah, glossy red. Why wouldn't you want a sweet, sweet anodized container for your mistletoe? It's gone. Oh, I forgot this is for the heart. So the text on top of this is just outright confusing intentionally. Forgot what model we were working on. All right, so there's your variety of stuff. Let's take a break and we'll work on this for a little bit, and then we will do some of the more advanced stuffs. So keep what you're doing, play around with it.